I'm Kurtop, and these are 100 facts about the past that influenced our lives, honey. The cost of building the Pyramid of Khufu. We are used to skyscrapers that rise with the help of metal frames and modern technology. But the Pyramid of Khufu, built around 2600 BC, still amazes the imagination. Its height reached 146 meters, and only by the 13th century AD did buildings appear that were taller. To understand how much it would cost to build such a pyramid today, historians and engineers estimated the expenses for stone, transportation, wages, crane rentals, and so on. The total comes out to an impressive sum of about $5 billion. After all, it would require about 2.5 million cubic meters of limestone, which would have to be transported from quarries, and for the inner lining, thousands of tons of granite from Aswan, located hundreds of kilometers away. Add to that the designers, geologists, fuel for transporting the blocks, and giant cranes. In ancient times, everything was done by hand. It is believed that thousands of free workers were employed at the construction site. They were regularly rotated in teams, receiving decent food and housing. They moved multi-ton blocks along ramps using wooden rollers and built a colossal structure that amazes with the precision of its assembly. Even today, you can't fit a knife blade between some of the stones. According to some experts, the construction took from 20 to 27 years. To feed the workers, about 2 tons of meat were needed every day, not counting grain, vegetables, and water. It is noteworthy that the project itself was led by Kim Yoon, the pharaoh's nephew, who actually served as the chief architect. It was he who coordinated the work of tens of thousands of people, which in itself speaks of the impressive organization of labor in ancient Egypt. Today, the pyramids remain not only an object of historical heritage, but also a source of eternal questions about what humanity is capable of in pursuit of ambitious goals. For the Egyptians, the Pyramid of Khufu was something more than just a building. It is a symbol of the pharaoh's power and the greatest engineering achievement of its time, which still inspires us to achieve bold things. A wooden wishing well. In the territory of Bavaria in Germany, archaeologists found the remains of a well-preserved wooden well. People used it back in the Bronze Age, but they didn't use it the way we do today. Researchers found many ritual offerings, jewelry, and remains of pottery. In ancient times, our ancestors might have used the well just like we do. We throw coins into the water for good luck. The area of today's city of Germering in Upper Bavaria used to be an ancient settlement. This is confirmed by numerous finds in this region. During excavations covering about 7 hectares, many structures and artifacts from the Bronze Age to the early Middle Ages were found. Many wells were found here from which people used to draw water. But one well was unusual. This well is more than 3,000 years old. It is located at a height of 5 meters, and its depth is much greater than that of the ancient one. It's rare for a well to be preserved for over 3,000 years. The well's wooden walls remain intact at the bottom, though they're slightly damp from groundwater. Archaeologists found 26 bronze clothing pins here, a bracelet, 2 metal spirals, an animal tooth, amber beads, and more than 70 ceramic vessels. Such contents fundamentally distinguish this well from the others at the excavation site. The condition of these items indicates that they were not simply thrown into the well, but were carefully and gently accumulated. Even today, fountains around the world contain many artifacts and coins that people throw in for luck or to return to that place. That's human psychology. We find it easier to believe in superstitions and luck than to take action. People believed the same way thousands of years ago, when they threw their valuables into a well and made wishes. The secret of the forbidden book of Enoch. There is one book in the world that is considered forbidden among all believers. All the churches in the world don't even want to say the name of the forbidden book out loud. This book holds many secrets and has become surrounded by a lot of legends. And now it's already hard to say what was true and what wasn't. The Book of Enoch is an apocryphal text, dated to the 1st century BC. Believing Christians first learned about this book in the 18th century. The secret text was discovered as part of the Ethiopian Bible. However, the Pope and all the clergy forbade giving official status to the ancient text and including it among the canonical books. The book contains one of the most mysterious and controversial religious texts in the world. Although in the Holy Scriptures it is referenced by Apostle Peter, Tertullian, Clement of Alexandria, and Origen, and even that could not sway the Vatican and make it stop banning the book. The author of the ancient book is the Old Testament patriarch Enoch, the seventh descendant of Adam. He describes completely different events that caused the Great Flood. Perhaps this information confuses the popular pope. The Bible mentions that Enoch was 365 years old when he went to heaven. In heaven, he learned about the kingdom of God and received knowledge that he was able to pass on to humanity. After that, many angels descended to earth, saw beautiful women, and took them as wives. In response, God became angry and decided to wash away their sins with a great flood. For millennia, people have tried to understand the Scripture's meaning. If children were born from angels and earthly women, they were real giants. From 5 meters and up, the angels taught people how to create weapons and passed on secret magical knowledge to them. However, nothing good came of it. Humanity only destroyed itself. God, seeing what was happening on earth, warned Noah about his decision to cleanse the earth of the ungodly, leaving only the righteous. The Lord sent the angels into darkness until the day of judgment. The giants destroyed each other, and that time became the beginning of a new human era. To this day, the knowledge presented in this book is being thoroughly studied, not only by religious people, but also by scientists and even ordinary readers. After reading this book, many questions and theories about the origin of humanity arise. This book states that the Lord came to earth from another world and populated it with people. Such a theory of the origin of humanity does not match any of those accepted in different religions. This book is once again seen as mysterious and mystical. The strangest exhibits in the museum. A museum is a place where, in principle, all the findings of archaeologists end up, and where anyone can take a closer look at them. I will tell you about such exhibits further. In the photo, you see the upper part of the body of an ancient Celt who was sacrificed almost 2,000 years ago. At the time of his death, the young man was about 20 years old. He was killed quite brutally, although at that time such a death was considered a sign of special favor. Before the sacrifice, his nipples were cut off, he was dismembered and burned. What's interesting is that the young man had very well-groomed nails, and that means he was someone from the ruling elite. The harsh Gauls would sacrifice their chief in this way when his term of rule was coming to an end, and 20 years was considered the end of a chief's career. This ram on the wheel is at least 100 or 150 years old. It's creepy, not only because of its appearance, but also because of the legends that have grown around it during its time in the museum. The staff at the Canadian Museum believe the ram is cursed and claim they hear sounds at night, like the creaking of its chariot, and the guards go mad with fear. They turn on loud music so they don't hear the ram moving around the museum. Of course, most likely, it's just a local scary story. However, this toy still looks creepy. And this is a real sheep's heart, not a toy anymore. It's completely pierced with pins, nails, and needles. And this heart played a very important role. It protected its owner from enemies. Honestly, I don't quite understand how such a creepy, disgusting piece of meat with pins can protect someone from enemies. Maybe it's because I don't really believe in magic. This bone is considered ritual in Tibetan Buddhism. It's not as simple as it might seem to you. This bone with a knob is capable of producing an amazing sound called kairuru. This bone, just like the previous amulet, can also ward off evil spirits. The material used to make it is a human tibia. Buddhists believe that the bones of girls are better suited for this. Who are we to argue with Tibetan Buddhists? To complete this set, you also need drums made from 2 skulls. Artificial intelligence has found new geoglyphs. Archaeologists, with the help of artificial intelligence, have discovered 303 new geoglyphs near the Nazca lines in Peru. These figures, depicting parrots, cats, monkeys, killer whales, and even decapitated heads, have almost doubled the number of known drawings at this mysterious archaeological site, which is about 2,000 years old. A team from Yamagata University in Japan, in collaboration with IBM Research, found previously unknown geoglyphs that are significantly smaller in size than the giant geometric patterns created between 200 and 700 AD. These figures, dating back to 200 BC, provide new data about the transition from the Papyrus culture to the Nazca, who later created such famous drawings as the hummingbird, monkey, and whale. According to archaeologist Masato Sakai, The use of artificial intelligence made it possible to speed up and improve the process of mapping the geoglyphs. Thanks to this approach, the team was able to find 303 new drawings in just 6 months, which is significantly faster than in the previous nearly 100 years when 430 geoglyphs were discovered. Artificial intelligence helped to recognize small relief geoglyphs that are difficult to notice with the naked eye, as well as to analyze huge amounts of data collected by drones to identify potential sites for new discoveries. Drones and artificial intelligence have become a quantum leap in the study of geoglyphs. Some of the new drawings are only 3 to 7 meters in size, so they remained unnoticed with traditional research methods. Drugs during sacrifice. South America is just as fascinating as Egypt when it comes to the ancient world. The ancient peoples who lived here did truly terrifying things. This time, scientists from the USA, Peru, and Poland have found chilling evidence. After conducting numerous studies to be sure of their assumptions, they determined that the ancient Incas drugged children before sacrifices. In this way, they calmed them before the ritual, which was watched by hundreds or even thousands of people. And most likely, the children's parents witnessed it as well. In the area of the Amparo volcano in Peru, archaeologists discovered the remains of 2 children. And based on their hair and nails, scientists found small amounts of cocaine and the hallucinogen, ayahuasca, which is still widely used in this region today. They are also sure that 500 years ago, the Incas used ayahuasca to counter alcohol's effects, not as a hallucinogen. Scientists believe that the children fully understood what awaited them in the near future, and that they would not have agreed to the sacrifice voluntarily. To achieve this, shamans gave them drugs for several weeks, constantly increasing the dosage. This is confirmed by Spanish colonizers who witnessed this gruesome ritual. They wrote that they saw people being brought to the sacrificial ritual, and they behaved completely calmly, as if they had been preparing for this their entire lives. The Capacocha ritual was a very common practice among the ancient Incas, but it was only performed on special occasions. A special occasion was considered to be a victory in battle or the birth of a royal son. What now seems incredible was considered commonplace just 500 to 600 years ago. To ease the tension a bit, I'll tell you about one of the oldest trading settlements in Oman, the oldest Christian church. Archaeologists have discovered the remains of an Armenian church that is almost 2,000 years old. This makes it one of the oldest in the world and the oldest in Armenia. The University of Münster in Germany, which cooperated with the Armenian Academy of Sciences during the excavations, called this discovery sensational evidence of early Christianity in Armenia. The church was discovered during excavations in Artashat, which was once a thriving metropolis and the capital of the ancient Armenian kingdom. Experts believe that the church was built in the 4th century AD at the same time as the Etchmiadzin Cathedral, the first Armenian church, which is considered the oldest in the world. The building is the oldest archaeologically confirmed church in Armenia. It is the first known octagonal church in Armenia. Similar structures are found on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea and are also dated to the 4th century. The church resembled early Christian memorial buildings. Its diameter was about 30 meters. The floor was made of a mixture of sand and cement, and the walls were made of terracotta. The terracotta was probably brought from Greece or Italy. Scientists also discovered traces of wooden platforms, which made it possible to accurately date the structure using radiocarbon analysis. The mummy of Tashvinet. This is the oldest mummy in Africa. In Libya, at the Wan Muhagiak archaeological excavations, archaeologists discovered unique mummies. After conducting a lot of research, scientists stated that the mummies are 5,400 to 5,600 years old. Their uniqueness lies in their age. Their age is older than all those previously found in neighboring Egypt. The discovery was made by Professor Fabrizio Mori in 1958. The mummy of a 3-year-old child was found in a fetal position. The embalmed body was carefully wrapped in leaves and covered with antelope skin. Instead of internal organs, there were some herbs inside the body. Scientists are still studying the mixture of herbs to understand how the body was able to be preserved for almost 6,000 years. After the discovery of this mummy, archaeologists are certain that the first mummies on the continent did not appear in Egypt. The Egyptians used mummification techniques that they borrowed from other peoples. A warning from the depths of time. Japan is one of the most developed countries in the world. At the same time, it is located in one of the most dangerous regions of the planet. An entire country with a population of millions lives in danger every. What's most interesting is that it's always been this way throughout the region's entire history, and people have lived here for many centuries. This forced the ancestors of the Japanese to understand natural phenomena. All over Japan, there are so-called tsunami stones. These are ancient slabs with inscriptions that warn that it is dangerous to build houses below a certain mark. If a tsunami happens, houses in this area will be flooded. One of the most famous of these stones is located in the village of Anyoshi. On a 3-meter slab, there's an inscription that says, "High dwellings are the peace and harmony of our descendants." Remember the disaster of the great tsunamis. Do not build houses below this point. On other stones, there is a warning telling people to fear earthquakes because a tsunami will follow after them. Stone slabs like these are located all along the Japanese coastline, and some of them are more than 600 years old. The problem is that many Japanese people do not believe in predictions like these written on stones. It seems to them that this is just an ancient curse. They build their homes in dangerous areas, and then entire families suffer and die. It seems to me that people in ancient times, when they placed these stones, had gone through more than one tragedy, and then decided to warn their descendants. But the descendants think they're smarter than their ancestors. We also don't want to listen to our grandmothers and grandfathers, do we? Yes, our ancestors didn't have advanced technology or modern measuring instruments, but they had a keen sense of observation and a certain practical wisdom. That's why we should definitely pay attention to our past. And that's exactly what archaeologists did with the following discovery. Ancient people today. An interesting conclusion about ancient people was made by Professor Gregory Ford from the University of Alberta. In 2003, the remains of the Florensian man, or Homo florensius, were discovered on the island of Florence. The approximate age of the 2 skeletons found here is about 20,100 years. Due to the use of different dating methods, it is not yet possible to determine the exact age. Professor Ford believes that even today, ancient humans may still live on this island. To prove his theory, Professor Ford wrote his own book, which mentions the legend of the ape man, and includes dialogues with representatives of the indigenous people. He believes that the local people actually encountered descendants of ancient humans and even interacted with them. Any lie or legend contains a grain of truth, so it can be concluded that ancient humans on this island either became extinct quite recently or still live there even today. If a legend has a story that is too illogical, then most likely it has changed over time. With each generation, people add something new or forget something. But an encounter with people who look like apes in our days is actually quite real. Many of you know that there is an entire tribe living in the Indian Ocean that still knows nothing about technology. Many YouTube videos cover the Sentinelese, and I've discussed them in past videos. So there is a precedent, and we can believe that the ancestors of ancient humanoid beings still live on Florence Island. The author of the book says that he has testimonies from at least 30 eyewitnesses who have had contact with a creature similar to the Florence man. The local residents consider the hominins to be unintelligent beings who hardly possess any language skills and have no modern technologies, not even the simplest ones. However, outwardly, they look very similar to humans. Of course, eyewitness testimonies cannot be considered scientific proof of the existence of real people. However, this is good food for thought, which is what I always try to convey to you. I want you, after watching the video, to relax and think a little before going to sleep about how amazing our world is and how interesting our history is. New alien mummies. In 2017, something unusual was discovered in one of the Peruvian caves. A dried, Voldemort-like figure with 3 fingers and an elongated skull attracted the attention of the whole world. A whole army of experts was the first to start studying it, including journalist and ufologist Jaime Maussan. He even claimed that inside the mummies there are rare metal alloys, as if they were cosmic implants. While scientists argued the mummies found friends, Two new discoveries, nicknamed Palomo and Antonio, amazed everyone. 3 fingers, slanted eyes, and an age of about 1,500 years. A CT scan showed that their organs are similar to those of humans. On Antonio's body, traces of a knife wound were found, and Palomo had remnants of hair. Hairy aliens are something new. The Diary of Merer. In 2013, archaeologists Pierre Tally and Gregory Moroir discovered papyrus scrolls at the site of an ancient harbor on the Red Sea coast, which are the oldest known documents. These records, dated to the 27th year of Khufu's reign, were created by workers who directly participated in the construction of the pyramid. Among them are accounting books describing the distribution of resources: bread, beer, grain, and meat to feed 20,000 workers. An even more unique find was the diary of Inspector Merer, who led a team of 200 people. The diary describes in detail the process of transporting limestone blocks from the Tura quarries to Giza. These blocks, which were used for the pyramid's casing, were transported along the Nile on wooden boats during the annual flood. Each boat could carry up to 70-80 tons of stone, and Merer's team managed to make 2-3 trips during a 10-day week, transporting about 1,000 blocks per season. Especially noteworthy is the mention of the noble Ankaf, Khufu's half-brother, who supervised the construction of the pyramid. The diary also records, for the first time, the original name of the pyramid, Akhet Khufu, which translates as Horizon of Khufu. These records confirm the existence of a complex infrastructure, including canals, a harbor, and storage facilities. The workers not only transported materials but also built ports and managed resources. The archives were probably buried in Wadi al-Jarf after Khufu's death, when the work was suspended. Egyptologists consider these discoveries to be the key to understanding how the ancient Egyptians were able to build some of the most magnificent structures in human history. A temple for the lion-headed goddess. In Egypt, in the area of Athribis, an ancient temple carved into the rock was discovered. Its age is estimated to be about 2,100 years, and it dates back to the reign of Ptolemy VIII, who ruled from 170 to 116 BC. This ruler, known for his complex political and family history, left behind many monuments, and the new temple has become an important discovery. Bas-reliefs have been preserved on the walls of the temple, depicting Ptolemy VIII making offerings to the lion-headed goddess Repit and her son Calant. Repit was the wife of the god Ptolemy. Minra, who was associated with fertility. Archaeologists believe that the temple was built for this goddess, although its name remains unknown for now. During the excavation, scientists discovered a hall where temple utensils and amphorae were stored. Unique bas-reliefs depicting Repit and Minra were found at the entrance to the room. Of particular interest is the depiction of Minra surrounded by the beacons of stars, which the ancient Egyptians used to navigate at night. These stars have human bodies combined with animal heads, such as a falcon and an ibis. The secret language of the Ice Age. Archaeologists and scientists are still studying cave paintings all over the world. People always want to see something they've never seen before. And now researchers have found unique markings on cave paintings. Some believe that these were not just random marks, but the beginnings of a real language that people used to communicate during the Ice Age. In fact, hunter-gatherers from the Ice Age were capable of much more than just drawing animals on rocks. In their drawings, they showed not just the animals that surrounded them, but also recorded detailed information about their lives. These drawings are over 20,000 years old. For a long time, researchers have believed that their meaning is much deeper than archaeologists previously thought. Often, new discoveries are made by ordinary people. That's what happened this time as well. An ordinary furniture restorer and amateur archaeologist came to the conclusion that the markings on the cave paintings indicated the life cycles of the animals. At first glance, the random dots and lines may seem like part of the drawing, but Beacon claims that they reveal a record of information and references to a calendar, taking the form of a kind of writing. There are sequences of markings next to images of reindeer, wild horses, fish, and bison. Scientists compared the birth cycles of modern animals, used them as a reference, and found a certain pattern. These symbols were used by the people of Upper Paleolithic. People of the Paleolithic period communicated with each other through writing. We still can't know exactly how their words or sounds sounded, but we can say for sure that the combination of these symbols indicated events related to animals, possibly their mating or birth periods. It's like a kind of instruction manual for zoologists or farmers. Every person from that time understood in which period the mating of horses or the birth of reindeer offspring occurred. For many, this may seem like a minor discovery in the field of archaeology, but in fact, we can finally understand when the first writing began to appear on our planet. Ancient people were far from as stupid as we are told in history textbooks. Sacrifice in Denmark. In Denmark, on the island of Zealand, archaeologists discovered the remains of a person who was presumably sacrificed. The ritual was most likely performed during the Neolithic era, and the find is more than 5,000 years old. So far, specialists have found leg bones, a pelvis, and a fragment of the lower jaw with teeth. Archaeologists will later use pelvic bones to determine sex and teeth to estimate age. Let me remind you that there are only two sexes in humans, male and female, and they can be distinguished by their pelvic bones. The fact that this was a ritual sacrifice is indicated by the animal bones and the flint axe found nearby. Archaeologists find bog bodies all over the world. Some die in accidents, while others end up buried during sacrifices. In ancient times, people believed that such sacrifices to the forces of nature would help overcome hunger and other disasters. They thought that the bog, by absorbing a person, would help the people. Fortunately, humanity no longer thinks that way, and during the global melting of glaciers, people aren't sacrificed. The secret of a 4,000-year-old mummy has been revealed. Scientists managed to uncover the mystery of the Egyptian woman Shenet-A, whose mummy was sealed in a cartonnage without visible seams. With the help of a CT scan, researchers finally understood how she was embalmed about 3,000 years ago. Shenet-A lived during the Third Intermediate Period under the rule of the 22nd dynasty. At the time of her death, she was about 30 to 40 years old, and the careful preparation of her body for the afterlife indicates her high social status. For many years, scientists could not explain how the remains ended up inside the cartonnage, finding only a small hole near the feet. However, scanning revealed a seam along the back and lacing, which provided the key to the mystery. The embalmers softened the cartonnage to make it flexible, made an incision in the back, and placed the body inside. Then they sewed up the seam and used a wooden panel at the feet to hold it in place. The internal organs were removed and replaced with small figurines of the sons of Horus, Amset, Hapi, Duamutef, and Quebec-Sinuf. Each of them protected a specific organ. It was also found that Shenet-A had lost several teeth and the remaining ones were badly worn down, which may be related to the sand content in the food. The Egyptian woman's eyes were replaced with artificial ones, and her body was wrapped in expensive linen. Her brightly decorated sarcophagus emphasizes her privileged status. The ancient Egyptians prepared for the afterlife much like we prepare for retirement. They saved up resources to provide for themselves in the world of the dead. The most lifelike mummy in the world. This story began a little over 100 years ago. It happened in Palermo, Italy. In 1918, Rosalia Lombo was born. And not living even a week before her second birthday, the girl died of pneumonia. Obviously, the girl simply didn't have time to become popular. Everything happened after her death. The girl's father was devastated by grief. Because of this, he decided to use the services of the best specialist of that time, Alfredo Salafia. The mummification specialist injected a special mixture into the girl's arteries, consisting of formalin, chlorine, alcohol, salicylic acid, glycerin, and zinc. This protected her circulatory system from decomposition. After this mummification process, the girl was placed in a small glass coffin. To this day, her body is kept in a small church in Palermo. This girl is 100 years old, but she looks as if she were alive. And everyone who has seen the mummified girl doesn't believe that she is just sleeping. Mummification helps preserve the body for a long time. However, due to the natural process of decomposition, the healthy and fresh appearance of the deceased will inevitably change over time. It is impossible to perform mummification in a way that completely preserves the skin tone and eye color as they were in life. As the saying goes, the impossible is possible. Either a miracle happened in our case or the mummification specialist truly had incredible talent. And that's not all. Scientists who constantly observed the girl's body record weak electrical impulses sent by her brain, lasting 33 and 12 seconds. Such impulses are characteristic of a living person, although the girl's death has been confirmed more than once. The mystery of the world's most alive mummy draws curious tourists, so visit our link to see it yourself. If you enjoyed this, like the channel. See you.
Которая выглядит как живая.
Trilingual cuneiform. Before you is the inscription of Xerxes Fripper, one of the great Persian kings who ruled in the 5th century BC. This inscription is made on a smooth section of rock 20 meters above the ground. This makes it hard to reach and gives it a special grandeur. It is located near Lake Van in modern-day Turkey and is part of the ancient Van fortress. The inscription is unique because it is written in 3 languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Akkadian, which was typical for Persian kings who wanted to demonstrate their power over many peoples. Xerxes I, known for his campaigns against the Greeks and mentioned in Greek history, used similar inscriptions to assert his authority and greatness. Each symbol here was carved with great precision, and cuneiform was used to convey the official message. The height and complexity of the inscription's placement also indicate the power of the Persian king, and were intended to be visible to everyone who passed by. A mysterious substance in the coffin. In the northwest of China, in the Xinjiang region, archaeologists made a shocking discovery. In an ancient coffin about 3,600 years old, where Bronze Age mummies were found, a mysterious substance was discovered on the neck of one of the women. Today, scientists are confident that this is the oldest cheese in the world. Researchers extracted DNA from this substance and found out that it is kefir cheese made from cows' and goats' milk. This discovery is important for understanding the origin of kefir and the evolution of probiotic bacteria. Chao Mei-Fu from the Chinese Academy of Sciences, together with her colleagues, analyzed the bacteria, yeast, and proteins in the sample, which made it possible to identify the ancient cheese. Research shows that kefir cheese was important for people of that time. It may have been placed in the grave as part of burial customs or as food for the afterlife. Interestingly, 2 types of cheese were found in the coffin, one made from goat's milk, the other from cow's milk. Genetic studies have shown that the microorganisms in the cheese are similar to modern kefir strains found in East Asia and Tibet. This raises the question of kefir's geographic origin. It was previously believed that kefir originated in the Caucasus, but new data suggests the possibility of a second source in Xinjiang. These results show that kefir spread around the world in different ways, and its history is closely linked to the evolution of human culture. A bronze plate in the shape of a hand. Let's start with a discovery made in warm Spain. Archaeologists began excavating a hill where the walls of a medieval castle still stand. Near the fortification, they discovered the remains of a 2,000-year-old settlement. The Sertorian Wars took place at this site, and last year, at the site of the destruction, archaeologists discovered a unique bronze plate in the shape of a hand. The size of the plate was similar to a human palm, 14.5 centimeters. After conducting laboratory research, scientists examined strange inscriptions divided into 4 lines. There were a total of 40 symbols. When the bronze plate was first discovered, it was mistaken for part of a helmet. At first, neither ornaments nor inscriptions were visible. After a detailed analysis, scientists determined the composition of the plate: 53% tin, 41% copper, and 2% lead, which was considered normal for that time. A small notch was drilled into the metal hand, so it could be hung on the front door of a house as a protective charm. The first word was Sorioneku, which is easily translated into the modern Basque word Zorioniko, meaning luck or good omen. The rest of the inscription has not yet been deciphered. This seemingly primitive artifact can actually be considered an important archaeological and linguistic discovery. Scientists are confident that people spoke the Basque language more than 2,000 years ago. If this discovery didn't surprise you, the next one will definitely amaze you. Stone Age bag. Around 2500 BC, a Neolithic resident in what is now Germany found a unique way to decorate his bag. During excavations near Leipzig in 2012, archaeologists discovered more than 100 dog teeth carefully arranged in a grave, which led them to believe that they decorated the flap of a bag. Archaeologists noted that over time, the leather or fabric of the bag disappeared, leaving only the teeth all pointing in one direction. These teeth most likely decorated the outside of the bag. All of them are arranged in the same way, which resembles a modern flap. These finds were made in the Profin quarry, and other important artifacts were also discovered in the same area, including the burial of a woman who lived around 50 BC buried with half a kilogram of gold jewelry. However, even among such rich finds, the bag with dog teeth was a truly significant discovery. This is the first time archaeologists have found direct evidence of such an accessory. Decorating this bag required teeth from about 10 dogs. In other burials from that time, archaeologists also found wolf teeth, dog teeth, and shells, which apparently were used to decorate blankets and clothing. When the fabric decomposed, only these decorative elements remained. A spell from the Book of the Dead. I think I'll start my story about the first discovery with the archaeological cradle, with the place that each of you associates with archaeology, Egypt. Saqqara is the giant necropolis of the ancient capital of Egypt, Memphis. The last time unusual papyri were found here was more than 100 years ago, and today archaeologists were incredibly lucky. They discovered a 16-meter ancient papyrus with spells from the Book of the Dead. As soon as the archaeologists found it, they thought it was 9 meters long, but after restoration and cleaning, they realized it was 16 meters long. Specialists from the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir worked on its restoration, where it received its name, the Waziri Papyrus. The uniqueness of this find is also that it is the first papyrus discovered by an Egyptian. An Egyptian found it, and they named it after an Egyptian. That sounds rather strange. So who was discovering all the finds in Egypt and conducting the excavations before? Archaeologists worldwide have conducted excavations in Egypt for many years. Researchers from Great Britain, whose colony Egypt once was, contributed especially well to this work. They promised to display the papyrus at the opening of the Grand Egyptian Museum. At the moment, specialists are working on translating it from hieratic to hieroglyphic and Arabic languages, so that everyone in the modern world has the opportunity to read the spells from the Book of the Dead. The only question is, do we really need to read these ancient spells? Write in the comments what you think about this. The Book of the Dead is a funerary text from ancient Egypt, containing declarations and spells to help the deceased in their afterlife. The book consists of funerary texts and dates back to 50 BC. The context of this mysterious papyrus with spells from the Book of the Dead will shed light on the beliefs of the ancient Egyptians and their transition to the realm of the dead. Roasted nuts in ancient times. Of course, nowadays roasted nuts don't seem like anything surprising, and each of you has probably tried this amazing treat at least once in your life. But in ancient times, people were not so eager to heat treat their food. Why roast nuts if they are already tasty and healthy? Meat, on the other hand, is a different story. So, scientists from the Center for Central Baltic Scandinavian Archaeology claim that people in the territory of Germany mastered the technology of roasting hazelnuts about 10,000 years ago. Personally, I prefer cashews. What kind of nuts do you like? Write in the comments below the video. In the Duvensee bog in northern Germany, archaeologists found cremated bones that are 10,500 years old. By the way, these are the first bones discovered at this site, and the oldest ever found on the territory of present-day Germany. Historians believe that Duvensee was once a lake. People used to fish here and cook their catch over a campfire nearby, and at that very moment they were roasting hazelnuts, which means that people in ancient times were quite the gourmets. Most likely people came to this place in the fall to gather nuts. Archaeologists have found both small and larger hearths used for roasting hazelnuts. They also found mats made of bark for sitting on damp soil and pieces of worked flint. The local tools are very similar to those that were discovered in Britain. This proves that people in ancient times exchanged knowledge and experience with the neighboring region. In order to reach each other, they used a land corridor to Doggerland, which is now submerged due to climate change. The most interesting thing is that flint does not naturally occur in this region. It was brought here from another place. Archaeologists accidentally discovered ancient human bones here. Now we know that in Germany, roasted hazelnuts were once very popular, and in Japan, a terrifying message from ancient times was discovered. Ancient underground city. Scientists and historians keep revealing new things about the ancient city of Derinkuyu. Early Christians lived here, hiding from the Romans, as well as Arab Muslims who sought refuge from the Arab-Byzantine wars. During major house renovations, builders break down the walls, and of course they don't find anything even behind them. However, an incident that happened in Turkey surprised millions of people. A resident of one house was breaking down walls in the basement, and behind one of the walls, he discovered a multi-level underground city. Archaeologists believe that up to 20,000 people live there. The man had lived in this house for several decades and had no idea that behind one of the walls was a city carved into the rock, where people lived in the 8th and 7th centuries BC. This city has many tunnels and secret labyrinths. Even the locals could get lost here, let alone uninvited guests. Many of the passages had huge stone doors that could be closed from the inside and block the way. When archaeologists call this place a city, they are not exaggerating at all. There were wells up to 55 meters deep, water channels, and ventilation. All conditions were created so that people would not have to come to the surface for a long time. The total area of this giant structure is 276 square kilometers. There are a total of 18 floors in the city of Derinkuyu. This place was very lively. In addition to something similar to apartments, there were schools, prayer houses, and meeting places here. Animals were raised as close to the surface as possible so that the smell from the livestock would escape outside more quickly. The mysterious and unique city was first discovered more than 60 years ago, and archaeologists are still conducting their research here. Some fragments of history have already been discovered by scientists this year as well. From ancient Turkey, let's move to Egypt, where scientists continue to study mummies. The mythical gold mine. In 1929, Australia found its own Indiana Jones, Lewis Harold Bell Lassiter. He claimed that 3 decades earlier, he had discovered a huge gold reef in the very heart of the continent. There was almost no evidence, but rumors of a lost Klondike stirred up prospectors and historians. In 1930, Lassiter managed to organize an expedition and set off into the outback again. He was accompanied by a pilot, 2 gold prospectors, Aboriginal guides, and even a representative of the governor. However, Lassiter behaved sullenly, got confused in his stories, and was reluctant to show the way. Upon reaching Mount Marjorie, he claimed that they were lost. His companions considered him an imposter and left. Lassiter was left only with a hunter, but soon he abandoned him as well. In the end, Harold continued on alone. A year later, he was found dead in a cave. Judging by his diary, he died of exhaustion. He spent his last months among Aboriginal people trying to survive. Meanwhile, the legend of the reef did not fade. Numerous seekers combed the McDonnell Range in hopes of finding gold. The press discussed the mysterious Swede, Olaf Johansson, who supposedly also knew the way to the treasure. Later, books and films appeared. Director Luke Walker, in the Lassiter's Bones Project, found Harold's letters mentioning that very Olaf and hinting at the lost reef. Modern research has not confirmed large deposits in the designated area. However, geologist Bill DeCarli came across a quartz seam that resembled Lassiter's description. He believed that Harold was merely retelling other people's stories. Nevertheless, the mystery of the treasure continues to excite the minds of romantics and gold hunters. The mysterious disappearance of the Inuit settlement. In November 1930, a hunter named Joe LaBelle, known among the local Inuit tribes, set out for a small fishing village on the shore of Lake Anjikuni in northern Canada. The village was known for its hospitality, and LaBelle expected to spend the night there, warm up, and talk with the local residents. However, to his surprise, he found the village completely deserted. All the dwellings were in place, with personal belongings, tools, and even prepared food left in the houses, but there were no people anywhere. What terrified the hunter most were the dogs. The local sled dogs, abandoned and left tied up, lay dead from starvation. This was especially frightening, since the Inuit always treated their dogs with great respect, as they were essential for survival in the harsh climate. There were no signs of struggle, robbery, or natural disasters in the village. Everything looked as if the people had disappeared in an instant. The most mysterious part of this story is the disappearance of bodies from graves. At the local cemetery, every grave was opened and the remains were gone. Joe LaBelle contacted the police and soon search operations began, but neither the bodies nor any traces of the missing people could be found. The story became public, and speculation and rumors began to spread. Local residents claimed that shortly before the village disappeared, they saw strange glowing lights in the sky hovering over the lake. These reports led to many theories, including extraterrestrial involvement. There is also a theory about the mass migration of the residents, possibly due to a lack of resources or the impact of a mysterious epidemic. However, no traces of a mass exodus have been found. Some people link this case to Inuit myths about the spirits of the Tunit, an ancient people who, according to legends, could take people away to the spirit world. Other explanations include mysterious atmospheric phenomena or even temporal portals. Almost 100 years later, the disappearance of the Inuit from the village of Anjikuni remains one of the strangest and most inexplicable mysteries in Canadian history, which still fascinates researchers and fans of the paranormal today. The mysterious tomb in Israel. There are many pilgrimage sites on our planet, and each of these places has its own legend or story. So in Israel, archaeologists decided to explore a pilgrimage site for early Christians. Many centuries ago, and even to this day, it is believed that this is the tomb of a woman who was present at the birth of Christ. But here's the question: did Christ's midwife ever really exist? Not far from the ancient city of Lachish, 50 kilometers from Jerusalem, back in 1984, looters discovered the tomb of Salome. 2,000 years ago, this cave was the burial place of a wealthy Jewish family. The cave consists of several chambers with burial niches carved into the walls. In ancient times, the tomb was looted by other marauders. All valuables were taken from the tomb, the coffins were smashed, and the remains of people were left scattered on the ground. The tomb is decorated with carvings and mosaics. Such a tomb is not unique, and archaeologists have found many similar ones throughout Israel. Besides the skeletons, traces of people from the early Byzantine period were found here, remains of oil lamps, which are associated with pilgrims. There were also many inscriptions on the walls, and judging by the text, they were left by believers. Some of the inscriptions were in Arabic, which could have attracted Christian pilgrims to the Jewish tomb. After analyzing the inscriptions on the walls, scientists concluded that a certain Salome, who was the midwife of Christ, is buried here. Mentions of this woman can be found in paintings and in the Gospel of James. Archaeologists suggest that the name Salome might have been dedicated on one of the ossuaries. Someone among the early Christians familiar with the Gospel of James might have seen this and told others that they had found the grave of the midwife who held the infant Christ in her arms. Such information is quite enough to ensure a flow of pilgrims. After all, no one is going to check whether the midwife of Jesus is actually buried in this place. It's enough just to tell people about it, and they already believe. Remains of people with huge heads. Scientists from the University of Honolulu and the Chinese Academy of Sciences made a unique discovery by finding the remains of a previously unknown species of ancient humans, Homo gomojuluensis. This species is believed to have gone extinct about 200,000 years ago. At the Sujayao site, archaeologists found 16 skeleton stone tools and animal remains. A distinctive feature of the new species is their massive skulls, with a volume of 1,600 to 1,700 cubic centimeters, which is significantly larger than that of Homo sapiens at 1,300 cubic centimeters, or Neanderthals at 1,400. However, scientists emphasize that a large skull does not always indicate higher intellectual abilities. Instead, it could have been an adaptation to the conditions of the Ice Age when the climate became cooler and harsher. Homo gomojuluensis hunted wild horses, ate their meat, and used their hides to make clothing. They lived in small groups, which made them vulnerable to climate changes and other external threats. Interestingly, the dental structure of Homo gomojuluensis is similar to that of the Denisovans, another hominid lineage that existed in the late Quaternary period, about 300,000 years ago. However, like many other ancient species, Homo dagomoguluensis likely disappeared due to the emergence of Homo sapiens, who genetically displaced the local populations in Europe and Asia. This find is 800 million years old. Scientists debated this discovery for many years. For a while, it was forgotten. People simply got tired of proving whether this find was real or mythical. Some diligently argued that the womb was real, while others claimed it was a lie. However, now people are talking about this beauty again and trying to prove that the woman belonged to some very ancient civilization. Well, let's go through everything step by step. Miners near the village of Rzhavchik in the Tesul district of the Kemerovo region, Russia, were working at a depth of 72 meters when they discovered a strange elongated object at the bottom of the mine, about a meter wide and more than 2 meters long. It looked like a sealed box, and at first glance, nothing unusual. They brought the marble coffin to the surface and tried to open it. Let me remind you that the find was discovered at a depth of 72 meters. For several days, the strong miners tried to open it. Inside, they found a young woman, tall, beautiful, with open blue eyes and delicate skin. Her hair was chestnut red, and her nails were neatly trimmed. She was immersed in a transparent bluish liquid and looked more like she was sleeping than dead. Quite an interesting overlap with the previous story, isn't it? The woman was wearing a dress but no underwear. People from the entire village and even from nearby towns came to see her. They removed her from the liquid for a closer look, and she began turning black before their eyes. Soon, she appeared like a typical old corpse. The scientists who arrived at the site immediately realized that such a discovery could completely change the history of humanity. After conducting radiocarbon analysis, the scientists determined that the woman had been submerged in water, a marble coffin, and was buried during the Carboniferous period of the Paleozoic era, millions of years before the appearance of dinosaurs, long before coal formed on the planet. That is why the coffin became embedded in a layer of coal and ended up so deep underground. The woman was nicknamed the Tesul Princess. They say that after this event, the site was sealed off. The military arrived, completely buried the mine, and closed off access to it. The 6 miners who discovered the princess died under strange circumstances, as often happens. There are rumors that similar burials were found near this place, but nothing is known about them anymore. Let's say this story is just a fabrication and nothing like that ever happened, and it's all just tales from the local villagers. However, there really are many stories about other discoveries that are hidden, that disappear, that people try to interpret in completely illogical ways. So that means there is someone who tries to stick to one official story. Corpses in the Cave of Death. The cave, located in a remote area of the Scottish Highlands, bears the ominous name Cave of Death, and this name is fully justified. The archaeologists who discovered it were shocked by what they found inside: the remains of decapitated bodies, children's heads on stakes, and traces of blood. Fortunately, a specialist estimates these terrifying artifacts are over 1,000 years old. Researchers suggest that the cave was used for sacred rituals involving human sacrifices. Perhaps this place was part of an ancient cult associated with the worship of gods or nature spirits. The results, including bloody sacrifices, were common in some ancient cultures, and the cave itself could have served as a kind of sanctuary for these purposes. The walls of the cave, covered with ancient traces and remnants of organic matter, allow us to reconstruct the grim scenes that took place here many centuries ago. Despite their disturbing nature, these findings let scientists better understand ancient rituals and beliefs, reminding us of the dark chapters that sacred practices have brought to human history. A double burial from the Viking Age. Archaeologists made a unique discovery in 1981 near the village of Gedrup, not far from the city of Roskilde in Denmark. The researchers found not just an unusual, but a very strange burial by the standards of that time. In the grave lay a woman and a man, but they were buried in completely different ways. The reconstructed burial is now considered the main attraction of the local museum in Roskilde. In the photo, you can see how huge stones are lying on the chest, left arm, and legs of the woman, and next to her lies a heavy spearhead, 40 centimeters long. Gender can't always be determined from bones with complete certainty, but in our case, archaeologists are sure The pelvis of the skeleton is small, but specialists are confident that the woman gave birth more than once. Also, from the skeleton, it's clear that the woman was not young. The spear is too large to be actually used in battle, so it was more symbolic. But the story with the stones is more interesting. There is an opinion that the huge stones were placed on the woman out of fear of her. People thought that this way, it would protect them from the woman being able to rise after death. There were also questions about the man. It is clear that his neck was broken and his legs were tied. That means he was hanged. This looks more like a criminal. But who would need to put a criminal and a half-warrior woman in the same grave? There was a suggestion that he was the woman's servant. Before they did the DNA test on the buried remains, it turned out to be even more confusing. The woman and the man were relatives, mother and son. It turns out we found the real reason for the fear of this woman. She was stoned so that she couldn't rise from the grave and take revenge for her son's death. And the heavy spearhead was most likely the witch's staff. You might think this is complete nonsense, but there's an explanation for this too, and a coincidence in an ancient saga written in the 13th century. The saga tells the story of the witch Katla and her son Odd. Odd was a criminal, but no one could wound or kill him, neither with a knife nor an axe, because he was protected by his mother's witchcraft. She hid her son at home and turned him into a dog or a pig, but another witch appeared who was able to expose them. In the end, the son was hanged right in front of his mother, and the mother was stoned to death, but she managed to curse her killers. The coincidence is very interesting. Could it be that archaeologists have managed to find real evidence of the ancient saga? If myths and sagas can be real stories, then what about the golden boy from Egypt? A discovery in a hard-to-reach cave. This bronze dagger with a bone handle is a Bronze Age artifact found in Malta in an almost inaccessible cave beneath the Dingley Cliffs. It dates back to around 2000 BC and belongs to the Borg in Nadur phase, when an advanced Bronze Age culture existed in Malta. However, it is still unknown why the ancient inhabitants chose this remote cave to place their artifacts. Perhaps the place had special significance or ritual value. The dagger's handle is decorated with circular patterns, which draws attention and raises many questions. This motif resembles some elements of Mycenaean Greek art, which may indicate cultural influence or trade connections. Interestingly, in the Bronze Age village where this dagger was found, shards of Mycenaean pottery were also discovered. Why was the dagger left in this cave? Was it part of a ritual or a symbol of special status? We can only speculate, but every detail, from the green patina on the blade to the mysterious circles on the handle, makes us think about the life and worldview of the ancient Maltese people, and possibly their connections with the Mycenaean Greeks. Rare artifacts from the Titanic, an alligator leather purse and tiny perfume bottles that still emit a strong fragrance. Just a few of the precious artifacts found during the excavation of the sunken Titanic. The location of the warehouse with these relics is strictly confidential. All that's known is that it's in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. The shelves are filled with thousands of items, from an overturned bathtub and portholes to tiny glass buttons. Thomasina Ray, the director of collections at RMS Titanic Inc., showed a bag made of alligator leather that belonged to Marion Minwell, a third-class passenger. Marion was a 63-year-old milliner who was traveling to the United States to see her daughter. Important documents and photographs were preserved in her bag. Her tragic fate was that she had originally booked a ticket on another ship, but ended up on the Titanic and became one of the 1,500 who perished. Among other artifacts are perfume bottles that belonged to Adolf Zellfeld, a perfumer and first-class passenger who survived the disaster. The scent of the perfume can still be detected, even though it spent decades at the bottom of the ocean. The collection also includes a bottle of champagne with the drink still inside, found among a variety of kitchenware on the ocean floor. Titanic was a luxurious liner, and there was a huge amount of champagne on board for the first-class passengers, who enjoyed the highest level of comfort. The tableware on board reflected class division, plain white ceramics for third class, and exquisite plates with gold trim for first-class passengers. These items help recreate the atmosphere of life on board. The company RMS Titanic Inc. which is authorized to recover artifacts from the ship, recently announced its intention to retrieve the Marconi radio equipment that transmitted the distress signals. Some people believe that the sunken ship is a burial site that should be left undisturbed. However, Thomasina Ray points out the importance of preserving the memory of the tragedy through these artifacts. What do you think? Should the ship be left alone, or should we still try to bring it ashore? Share your opinion in the comments below the video. The ship that managed to surprise? Sometimes it seems like the forces of nature are laughing at us, giving us new discoveries that raise a lot of questions. It's good when archaeologists find something and it immediately explains a certain moment in our history. It's good when they find the remains of ancient animals that were missing in the evolutionary chain, but it's much worse when they manage to find something that defies all logic. And when scientists determine the age of an object, it can rewrite everything we know about history. A similar story happened after the glaciers melted. A couple of years ago in Naryan-Mar, Russia, the melting of glaciers exposed unusual soil made up of humus and black earth. Researchers stated that there used to be a riverbed at this location. In the middle of this fertile layer, they found a vessel. It was a boat, or a small ship, about 10 meters long. The wooden parts of the ship were joined together with metal nails, and at first glance there seemed to be nothing unusual. But the thing is, this river was navigable about 20,000 years ago. After that, permafrost covered this area, and only now has the ice melted. The preliminary age of the nails is 6,000 years. So how did the ship end up here? 20,000 years ago. Where was it built? How was it brought here? Who did it belong to? Why was nothing else found nearby except for the ship? Like I said, there will be more questions than answers. If alternative history is to be believed, then during the time of the Cro-Magnons, there was already a civilization that could easily produce metal objects. According to the legends of some northern peoples, a semi-mythical nation of metallurgists once lived here who knew how to build furnaces, smelt various metals, and combine them with each other. It sounds like a fairy tale. However, we know that every lie in fiction hides at least a bit of truth. While we wait for new archaeological discoveries that will help us explain the origin of the old ones, I'll tell you a story about a unique person. 250 fossilized titanosaur eggs. Not only in China have large reserves of ancient dinosaur eggs been preserved, this time we were pleased by archaeologists from the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research and paleontologists from Delhi University. In the central and western parts of the country, 256 fossilized eggs of ancient reptiles were discovered. In total, researchers found more than 90 nesting sites of ancient titanosaur reptiles that lived in India 67 million years ago. Paleontologists noted that most of the eggs were found in one place and were pressed against each other. It seems that more than 60 million years ago, a female titanosaur left her offspring here and never returned to this place again. All the eggs belonged to one species of dinosaur. However, the number of eggs in the nest varied, and they also differed in size. This discovery of eggs tells us that their population was much larger than previously thought, and they nested in colonies. Titanosaurs were plant eaters. The giant reptiles lived in what is now Asia, Africa, Europe, and South America during the late Cretaceous period. It's hard to imagine, that these giants had a body length of up to 9 to 12 meters, and their weight reached 13 tons, which is a lot by the standards of modern animals. Is there any beer or jam? The history of beer dates back to the Neolithic period, more than 11,000 years ago. It's one of the oldest beverages that accompanied humanity in the early stages of its development. Some scientists even hypothesize that people started growing grain not for food, but to brew beer. This beverage might not have just been a way to quench thirst, but also played an important role in rituals and communication. Beer brewing is mentioned in one of the oldest literary works, the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is about 3,800 years old. This text, created in Mesopotamia, shows that even then beer was known and valued in society. Beer also played an important role in the legislation of that time. In the Code of Hammurabi, the collection of Babylonian laws, beer establishments were mentioned as places that were monitored especially strictly. The owner of a tavern had to maintain order, and if criminals gathered in his establishment, he could be sentenced to death. The ancient Egyptians were also great lovers of beer. The builders of the pyramids received a liter of beer every day for their work. Interestingly, high-ranking officials received as much as 5 liters a day, which highlights how important beer was in ancient society. How a scientist deciphered the Maya script. The greatest discovery in the study of ancient Mexico was made by the Soviet ethnographer Yuri Knorozov. He did what no one else had managed to do before. He found the key to reading the ancient Maya script, even though he first visited Mexico only 40 years after his discovery. Yes, it is possible to make a world-class discovery while being thousands of kilometers away. Yuri Knorozov was an interesting, mysterious, and quiet person. There were various stories and tales about him. He was fascinated by mysticism, Native Americans, and the deciphering of ancient scripts. As I mentioned earlier, he came to Mexico decades after his discovery. This happened in the 1990s. He was welcomed like a local star, like a celebrity. At the same time in Russia, where he had lived his whole life, few people knew about him. He was born in Kharkov in 1922 into a Russian intellectual family. During World War II, he moved with his family to Moscow, where he became interested in ethnography and later moved to Leningrad. Back in Moscow, Knorozov came across an article by the German scholar Paul Schellhus, who claimed that deciphering the Maya script was an unsolvable task. The young scholar took this as a challenge and believed that if something was created by the human mind, then it could also be solved by another human mind. While still a student at Moscow University, Knorozov helped sort through archives of war trophies from Germany, and among the materials from the Berlin Library, he discovered a publication of the 3 surviving handwritten Maya codices, published in 1930. In addition, he came across another crucial document, a report on affairs in Yucatan from the 16th century. It was written by Catholic Bishop Diego de Landa after the Spanish conquest of Mexico and the Maya. After studying the documents, he realized that each Maya symbol is read as a syllable and proposed a system for reading the entire language. In 1952, the scholar published an article called Ancient Writing of Central America in an ethnographic journal, where he presented his method. His work was valued in academia, and he was encouraged to write a dissertation on the topic. When Yuri Knorozov began to decipher more ancient Maya texts, he realized that this mysterious civilization had its own writing system, army, and administrative apparatus. This means that the Maya had a state. Previously, it was believed that the ancient Maya were barbarians and conquerors. After deciphering the ancient texts, the scholar received numerous awards. He was honored in the USSR, and students and officials came to see him from Guatemala, Mexico, and the USA. He was compared to Jean Champollion, who deciphered Egyptian hieroglyphs in the 19th century. During his trip to Mexico and Guatemala, the scholar visited all the significant sites of the ancient Maya, Palenque, Mérida, Uxmal, and saw Maya writing with his own eyes. He received an honorary award, the Order of the Aztec Eagle, from the Mexican ambassador to Russia, which he was very proud of. In the meantime, archaeologists are trying to study another mystical discovery. The gods lost their heads. Archaeologists made an interesting discovery in the area of the Roman bridges crossing the Pencalis stream and a tributary of the Italia River. Archaeologists found stone heads depicting the Greek gods Eros, Dionysus, the demigod Heracles, and several other gods from the Greek pantheon. In addition to these heads, a whole statue missing one leg was found nearby. Aizanoi was founded as a Phrygian city on the western edge of the Phrygian kingdom. Throughout its history, this city was influenced by different peoples. In ancient times, the city was under the hegemony of the Pergamon and Bithynian kingdoms, and then in 133 BC it came under the control of Rome. After the 7th century AD, Aizanoi fell into decline, and some buildings on the Temple Hill were turned into a citadel by the Chavdar Tatars during the Seljuk period. Scientists still do not know to whom the statue, which is more than 2 meters tall, belongs, whether it is a legendary hero or some kind of deity. In 2021, archaeologists found the heads of Aphrodite and Dionysus here, and in 2020 they discovered a broken statue of Heracles. This place can be considered a real cemetery of ancient statues. Archaeologists still have to find out why the gods lost their heads and where their stone bodies are. In addition to the statue in 2022 blocks belonging to a bridge, a sundial, and fragments of other marble sculptures were discovered here. But if the ancient gods are fictional characters, then humanoid creatures are a reality. And there is an opinion that they still live with us on the same planet. 260-day calendar. How many days are there in a year? Anyone on our planet knows the answer. But for most people, this number is 365, while for the inhabitants of some parts of Mesoamerica, this number is 260. Just like 3,000 years ago, these people still use calendars with 260 days in a year. And just recently, researchers found the earliest evidence that ancient stone structures were used to mark the seasons. Using LiDAR and aerial photography, archaeologists discovered hundreds of architectural complexes that are located. The land was leveled to facilitate synchronized observations of the rising and setting of the sun, moon, and other celestial objects according to this 260-day cycle. This calendar was most likely invented based on the cycle of maize cultivation and human reproduction. The earliest documented evidence of the use of this calendar was a glyph depicting 7 deer, one of the calendar days, as part of a 3rd century BC fresco in Guatemala. Unfortunately, these cultures did not leave written records from earlier periods, so it was difficult for scholars to prove that people used the 260-day year cycle until archaeologists found the stone remains of a giant calendar. Judging by the size of this structure, it was of great importance to the Olmecs, the Maya, and other cultures of that time, at least during the period when maize cultivation became widespread in the region. Excavating in impenetrable jungles is a very difficult task, so aerial photography with LiDAR has become a real miracle for archaeologists. Thanks to these capabilities, researchers can know in advance where they should conduct their excavations. In addition to the stone calendar, specialists have found many other structures, pyramids, and temples, and very soon, in my next videos, I will definitely tell you about them. For now, let's head to Israel, where archaeologists claim to have found the tomb of Christ's midwife. A knife handle in the shape of a gladiator. Archaeologists have found a rare artifact, a handle from a folding copper knife in the form of a miniature gladiator. The find is more than 2,000 years old. It was discovered by divers in the River Tyne near Corbridge, a Roman settlement in Northumberland, close to Hadrian's Wall. This is rare evidence that admiration for Roman gladiators reached even the outskirts of the empire. The handle depicts a secutor gladiator, a powerful warrior in heavy armor with a closed helmet and large weapon. The unique feature of the figurine is that it depicts a left-handed person, which is surprising because in ancient Rome this was considered a bad omen. It is possible that the figurine represents a specific warrior who was specially trained to use his left hand in order to gain an advantage in the arena. Gladiators, despite often being slaves or convicted criminals, could become real stars of their time. Their battles attracted crowds of spectators to the amphitheaters, and victories turned the fighters into legends. Even today, their romanticized image continues to attract attention, as evidenced by the success of such movies. The handle ended up in the river, and who its owner was remains a mystery. Indonesian Star Trek. In 1992, geologist Castillo made a discovery that still causes shock today. In the province of Kapanga, Indonesia, he explored the Devil's Cave in the mountains and discovered an unusual stone. On its fracture, mysterious symbols were engraved that resembled a star map. The markings on the stone are strikingly similar to the images from the plaques sent by NASA into space, with the Pioneer 10 and Pioneer 11 probes in the 1970s. The stone depicts a man and a woman holding hands, as well as the sun, stars, and lines resembling roots. Geologists claim that the stone was worked on hundreds of thousands of years ago. This casts doubt on its earthly origin, since at that time people supposedly could not have possessed such knowledge. Conspiracy theorists suggest that aliens received the message from the Pioneer probe, but miscalculated and ended up on Earth hundreds of thousands of years ago. Perhaps they got stuck here and left their mark in the form of this stone. Another theory says that the stone could have been created by a highly developed civilization that existed in Indonesia long before the Common Era. The map depicts a star system with 1 star and 7 planets, an almost exact reproduction of the solar system. Modern scientists recognize 8 planets, but not long ago Neptune was considered an asteroid. Whoever the authors of the mysterious stone were, their knowledge of the stars remains a mystery, astonishing modern science. No one to eat the corpses. Outbreak the Zoroastrian Tower of Silence on Malabar Hill, a sacred place for the Parsi community, is under threat due to the declining vulture population in the area. These birds play a key role in the ritual of Dakmenashini, exposing the bodies of the deceased so they can return to nature. However, the decline in scavenger numbers in Mumbai, which began in 2015, has put this ancient tradition at risk. The Tower of Silence, or Dakma, which is over 300 years old, is a circular structure symbolizing eternity in the Zoroastrian faith. It is located on a 22-hectare forested area. The outer circle of the tower is designated for men, the middle for women, and the inner for children. Before placing the body in the Dakma, relatives pray in special structures called bungli, and then the remains are carried to the Kandi by special attendants. According to Zoroastrian traditions, contact with a dead body is considered defilement, and vultures play an important role in ensuring cleanliness and maintaining the natural balance. But urbanization, changes in habitat, and environmental problems have led to a sharp decline in the number of these birds. The decomposition process of bodies has slowed down, which has created difficulties for performing the ritual. Small Head, the Netherlands is underwater. Underwater archaeologists have finally managed to identify which ship lies at a depth of 32 meters near the English coast. Until today, this ship was always listed as an unknown vessel that sank off Eastbourne. Now, after many years of research, it has been established that this is the Little Hollandia. This is a 17th century Dutch ship that transported marble and was built in 1656. Besides its primary purpose, the ship took part in all major battles of the Second Anglo-Dutch War. The ship was discovered in 2019, and it was immediately classified as an extremely important find and given the highest level of protection. Studying a 17th century ship allows us to take a deep look into the maritime history of that period. There were treasures on the ship that will be brought ashore and, after all stages of study, sent to a museum. The history of English shipbuilding. The shipbuilding history of the Netherlands and the other countries involved is fascinating because those countries built the best ships of that era. Besides some treasures, there were cannons, Italian marble, and Italian ceramics on the ship. The marble was to be delivered to the Netherlands for prestigious house construction. For some, learning the name of the ship may seem like a minor detail, but in fact, it's a major discovery. Thanks to numerous historical records about this ship, historians already have all the information. This way, it becomes much easier to understand who owned it, what it was used for, where it was headed, and why it ended up at the bottom. The story with the ship is a real historical fact. But what about the ancient Greek myths? Ancient calendar. In the photo, there are mysterious artifacts from the ancient Menajra temple in Malta, which is over 6,000 years old. This temple, located in the Krindi area, is one of the oldest religious structures in the world. On the megalithic stone found here, we can see intricate patterns that are believed to have been used for tracking the equinoxes. How did people of that era, without modern tools, manage to track the movement of the sun and mark key moments of the year? This question remains a mystery for archaeologists and historians. The Menajra temple is under UNESCO protection and is one of the few archaeological sites in Malta that is protected by a special tent. At first, this may seem excessive, as the white tent disrupts the visual integrity of the site. However, upon closer inspection, it becomes clear that this protection is necessary. Without it, the detailed carvings would gradually be destroyed by wind and rain. Board games. Humanity's love for board games began thousands of years ago. These games appeared before many civilizations and have accompanied people for millennia. The oldest game, according to archaeologists, was dice games. Dice found during excavations and dated to more than 5,000 years ago are almost indistinguishable from those used for millennia. This confirms that the excitement for games existed even in prehistoric times. One of the oldest board games played with pieces is the Egyptian game Senet, which originated around 3,500 A.B.C. According to legend, it was invented by the god of wisdom, Thoth, to lift a curse from the sky goddess Nut, which was placed by the moon god Khonsu. Senet was not just entertainment, but also a game with sacred meaning, symbolizing the struggle between good and evil, as well as the soul's journey to the afterlife. In the East, one of the oldest games is considered to be Go, whose history dates back to around 2000 BC. This strategic game, still popular today, symbolizes wisdom and concentration. Backgammon, on the other hand, probably originated in ancient Iran and appeared about 5,000 years ago, although the rules were only documented in Byzantium in the 5th century AD. The Romans also loved board games and played them in taverns where they ate and entertained themselves. Game boards were often carved directly into the tables. Although gambling games were prohibited on the streets, they could be played freely indoors. Archaeologists have also discovered loaded dice with weights inside, which indicates that people tried to cheat even in ancient times. The cocoon of the Condor Lagoons. In Peru, in a city with the interesting name of Lemabamba, a museum was opened in 2000 where 200 eerie mummies and royal belongings were placed. They were discovered in 1997 in Lactochi, a settlement of the Chachapoya people on the shore of Lake Laguna de los Condores, 80 kilometers south of Chachapoyas. The museum maintains a certain temperature so that the mummies can continue to be preserved and frighten museum visitors. On the faces of some mummies, fear and agony are visible. Their gaze makes visitors' blood run cold. In a remote northwestern region of the Andes lies the mountain lake Laguna de los Condores. For more than 50 years, it kept an amazing secret. In the limestone cliffs around the lake, there was a series of tombs. For 500 years, no one touched these burial structures until local farmers began digging everything up here. Many artifacts were damaged during these excavations. Archaeologists quickly began excavations at this site to protect the graves from looting, and fortunately, they managed to save about 200 unusual mummies. To place all of them in one location, a museum with climate control had to be built. Many mummies were inevitably destroyed. Inevitable for some. Some of the dead look at you with a frozen, agonized expression on their faces. Sometimes the faces are so well preserved that it seems like they could still blink. Only a few infants are on the shelves, their tiny bodies carefully wrapped in cloth. Now anyone can see the mummies, and archaeologists continue to study them. A sea voyage 450,000 years ago. Archaeologists in Greece made a sensational discovery. They found evidence that the extinct ancestors of modern humans could sail across the Mediterranean Sea almost 500,000 years ago, and we still consider them primitive. Between Greece and Turkey lies one of the cradles of antiquity, the Aegean Sea. Not only today does this place attract tourists from all over the world, and hundreds of thousands of years ago it was warm and pleasant here, and the sea was teeming with fish. Many anthropologists think that hundreds of thousands of years ago, the Aegean Sea's water level was much lower. There were many small islands in the sea, and between the islands, there were some land bridges. Therefore, traveling between continents while resting on these lively islands was not difficult. But what if there were no bridges? To find this out, researchers decided to check how much the water level in the Aegean Sea dropped over the past several 100,000 years. They found that during the ice ages, the level dropped by 150 to 225 meters below the current value. As it turned out, even an extremely low sea level would not have been enough to keep your feet dry. This proves that in order to reach the islands and leave traces of their presence there, which have now been found by archaeologists, ancient people would have had to set out to sea. So far, archaeologists cannot say for sure what kind of humanoid species was capable of traveling long distances by sea. And the strangest thing is that there was nothing like navigational instruments back then, so how could they travel between the islands and coordinate their route? That's a whole different topic for another video. Archaeologists suggest that these were Heidelberg humans, or even their descendants, early Neanderthals. This confirms the fact that when our descendants began their migration from Africa to Europe, they did it not only by land, but also by sea. The time of troubles in Russia, the eruption of the Huayna Putina volcano in Peru. February 19, 1600, influenced one of the darkest periods in Russian history, the time of troubles. This period coincided with the Little Ice Age, a summer when solar activity decreased and the Gulf Stream's current changed. However, the decisive role in the climate change was played by a volcanic eruption that released a huge amount of ash into the atmosphere, which led to a sharp cooling. The summer of 1601 in Russia was unusually cold and rainy, which caused the crops not to ripen. Frosts hit unusually early, destroying the crops. The next 2 years turned out to be just as harsh. In the summer, there were heavy rains and even snow. The price of bread increased 18-fold, which led to starvation and mass mortality. In 1604, people in Moscow even traveled by sleigh in the summer, and bread cost 25 times more than in prosperous times. Tsar Boris Godunov tried to cope with the crisis by banning bread speculation and organizing its free distribution. However, the wealthy held back. They hoarded grain supplies, ignoring the Tsar's decrees. Godunov even tried to ease the peasants' situation by allowing them to leave their landlords' lands, but the nobility opposed this. The peasants began to blame the Tsar, seeing the disasters as God's punishment. Popular unrest intensified. In 1605, Boris Godunov died under mysterious circumstances, and his son Fyodor took the throne. However, soon Fyodor and his mother were killed, which led to the time of troubles. It ended only in 1613, when Mikhail Romanov, the founder of a new dynasty, ascended the throne. That's how a volcanic eruption in South America affected a country thousands of kilometers away and caused a terrible crisis and famine for several years. Like and subscribe to the channel and leave your kind comments under the video. All of this helps promote the channel. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, everyone.